Welcome today's guest speaker, Mr. Tae Yong-ho.
Good morning and welcome to the FCCJ. I'm your moderator today, Andy Sharp from the Nikkei Asian Review. Today's guest, Tae Yong-ho, if my pronunciation is correct.
Yes.
Thank you. Is a former North Korean diplomat who held posts in Denmark, Sweden and the UK. And when he was the deputy ambassador in London, he created headlines around the world in 2006 by escaping to South Korea with his family in one of the biggest defections to South Korea from the north. As you can see, he's holding up these books. So last week, Bungae Shunju published a Japanese translation of his book about working as a diplomat for North Korea. It's translated as a password from the third floor. And in the book, he talks about some of the secrets of North Korean diplomacy and sheds new light on the Kim family. Of course, the North Korean regime didn't take a liking to this book being published, calling him some pretty rude names. Anyway, to cut a long story short, because we're sort of short on time today, the visit's very timely today, I think, with the big news that Xi Jinping is heading to Pyongyang right now to meet with Kim Jong-un. And of course, I would like to ask Mr. Tae about this, what his thoughts are about the situation between North Korea and China, and just some general thoughts on the whole denuclearization process on the Korean Peninsula. So anyway, without further ado, Mr. Tae is going to give us a short 10-minute introduction, maybe talking about his book, and then we'll hope to open the floor for 45 minutes or so of Q&A. So, Mr. Tae, after you.
Thank you very much and very good morning to all of you. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself shortly, and then I will tell something about my book, and then I'll be open to any kind of questions you raise to me. As Andy introduced, I worked as the deputy ambassador of North Korea to UK until the summer of 2016, and the questions which I was bombarded when I first arrived in South Korea was why and how I defected North Korea. So the reason is very simple, because I thought that the way Kim Jong-un regime has taken is wrong, and fortunately I was able to bring my first son to London in 2014, which was very fortunate. I think God blessed me so that all the members of my family could join in London. So I thought that that was the last opportunity for myself and for the members of my family, my wife and my two sons, who could escape North Korea. And as a father, I thought that it is my duty to cut off the chain of slavery for my sons. I thought that the Kim Jong-un regime would not end up easily, so if the life of myself and my family continued, then it would take another long year, and for my sons who attended British education in London, it could be a very difficult and miserable life if I forced them back to the Pyongyang. So that is the basic of the reason of the defection. And after I defected to South Korea, I wrote this book. This is the Korean version, and at that time I thought that it is my duty to tell the world how Kim Jong-un regime is functioning, what is the true picture of North Korea's decision-making process. So before this book, there was no book or no information about the third storied secretariat, which was a hidden organization and which supported the Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un leadership in North Korea. And when I opened about those decision-making process in North Korea through this book, Kim Jong-un, I don't know why, he opened his third storied secretariat for the first time in North Korea's history. So now everybody knows where it is, how it is functioning, what is the main mission of that organization in North Korean structure. And even before this book, the majority of North Korean people even did not know the existence of this huge organization in the Workers' Party of Korea and in North Korea's political structure. So I'm very proud that I was the first one who opened about the structure of the true North Korea's decision-making process. And I'm very happy that at this time Japanese publishing house Untitled Chapter published a Japanese version in last week. So the purpose of current visit to Japan is to tell about this book, so that I do wish that more Japanese people read this book and understand North Korea. North Korea and Japan is very near neighbor, but to my impression so far, there is no enough information about North Korea. There is no any detailed communications between North Korea and Japan. And as a former North Korean diplomat, it is my first visit in North Korea. As for North Korean diplomats, there are 4 countries which are most difficult to visit. Number 1 is South Korea. Very few North Korean diplomats were allowed to visit South Korea. Number 2 is Japan. And number 3 is Israel. Number 4 is United States of America. So before my defection to South Korea, I never visited these 4 countries in my life. I visited most of the European countries, but I was not able to visit South Korea, Japan, Israel, and America. And now I'm a free man. That's why so far I visited America, and now this is Japan. I haven't visited Israel yet, but I hope so. My wish to visit these 4 forbidden countries is almost realizing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tay. So I'm going to open this up to questions in a moment. Just I'm going to take this opportunity to ask you a question myself, if that's okay. So, based on...
One question each, please. So
one question
if
each.
If you ask 2 or 3 at one time, I can't remember. Yes.
Okay, I'll keep this to one question. It's very broad, but given the Xi-Kim summit that's going to take place over the next couple of days, what do you expect to see coming out of this summit? Obviously from a North Korean perspective, using a diplomatic background. So, what do you see as the outcome of this summit, especially ahead of Xi's meeting with Trump in Osaka next week?
I think the question looks very simple, but the answer must be very long. Yes, first of all, the main purpose for Kim Jong-un regime for negotiation is to keep North Korea as a new nuclear state in this region. There is no doubt about it. But it seems very difficult to keep this nuclear status in this region because of the UN sanctions. That's why Kim regime is looking for any kind of possibility to buy the time, because as a diplomat, what all North Korean diplomats were taught and were educated is that America has already acknowledged one Islamic country to be a nuclear power state. So if you compare Pakistan and North Korea to be a nuclear state, North Korea still thinks that it might be more easier than Pakistan to be a new nuclear state in this region. So basically they think that there is a possibility. But the point is how. So that's why the Kim Jong-un regime wants to turn this denuclearization of process into nuclear disarmament process. That is the policy principle of North Korea. So it seemed working until Hanoi summit. Before Hanoi summit, when Kim Jong-un reached an agreement with President Trump, it was a great success. Unexpected success to North Korean diplomacy. If you read the text of Singapore Agreement, it was clearly stated that the trust-building measures must take place first before any significant measures for denuclearization. So after Singapore Agreement, all North Korean media claimed that North Korea finally became a strategic state in this region because of Singapore Agreement. If you read the Singapore Agreement, it is clearly stated that first, improvement of bilateral relations between DPRK and America. The second, permanent structural peace arrangement in Korean Peninsula. And only thirdly, there is a mentioning of denuclearization of Korean Peninsula, but there is no any specific mentioning of denuclearization of North Korea. So the interpretation of this Singapore Agreement is quite different between America and North Korea. That is one of the main reasons why President Trump broke the Hanoi summit. If President Trump made any deal in Hanoi with Kim Jong-un, then that Hanoi deal could be one of the process of implementing Singapore Agreement, which is really a diplomatic failure to Trump administration. So now after Hanoi's failure, now North Korea is planning a new strategy to realize their own ambition to be the new nuclear state in this region. So the question is how? What is North Korea preparing? They reviewed the American policy in Hanoi and in Singapore. In Hanoi and Singapore, American administration avoided to discuss directly the issues of already made nuclear missiles. North Korea claimed that they completed the process of making nuclear and ICBMs, but in Singapore and in Hanoi, most of the focuses were on the North Korea's past nuclear history, not the present nuclear missiles. So North Korea wants to keep this kind of the process and framework at the next third round of talk. So before Xi Jinping's meeting on the 4th of June, the spokesman of North Korean Foreign Ministry issued a statement. And in this statement, it is clearly stated that North Korea wants to drop its own unilateral demand. And on the meanwhile, they asked American side to do the same. And they urged American side to look for a new approach for the solution of this the matters. So what does it mean? Because the currently Trump administration is advocating that North Korea's denuclearization process should be solved by way of inclusively and comprehensively. But on the meanwhile, America did not clearly say that what should discuss first, whether it is nuclear missiles or those hidden uranium enrichment facilities. So that's why now Kim Jong-un is trying to use Xi Jinping's visit to deliver his new approach to American side. So what North Korea's a kind of compromise at the coming third summit? To my impression, Kim Jong-un may open or he may abandon those 5 nuclear uranium enrichment facilities which President Trump asked in Hanoi summit. And if President Trump accepts this new offer from Kim Jong-un and make any kind of deal, then Kim Jong-un can avoid the discussion of already made nuclear missiles. If Kim Jong-un succeeds in convincing President Trump to make a deal on a past North Korea's nuclear facilities and succeed in keeping the current nuclear missiles for another few years, then it would mean to North Korea that North Korea can be accepted as a new nuclear state in this region. That is the basic, I think, game plan for North Korea. And they want to use the President Xi Jinping as a kind of a mediator in G20. President Xi Jinping is coming to Japan next week, and President Xi Jinping may deliver this new offer directly to President Trump. So now it's up to President Trump whether she would accept this new proposal or not.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm opening the floor to questions now. As Mr. Tay said, one question, keep it short. We'll start with Alistair over there.
Alistair Gale of the Wall Street Journal. Thank you for coming here. I'd like to ask about the experience of North Korean diplomats such as yourself. You talked about your own defection was a decision for the sake of your family. We've seen in recent months some movements for other defections, possible defections in Europe. I'm thinking of Spain and Italy. I wonder if you could help us understand, for North Korean diplomats, are there approaches made with offers to defect And if so, who do those offers come from? Or are there decisions to defect? Obviously, in your case, it was for your family. Do they come from the individuals, or is it a combination of both? If it's possible to generalize. Thank you.
To my impression, so far there was no any clear offer. I don't think there was any offer from any country to North Korean diplomats to defect. I think all governments are very cautious on that kind of, I think, approach to North Korean diplomats. For instance, the latest defection by North Korean Chancellor to Italy was also a kind of, his own decision. There was no even a clear, I think, cooperation from Italian side or whatever. And you know that as soon as he defected, he was not even able to take his daughter out from the embassy. And as soon as he defected, the North Korean the embassy in Italy sent his daughter back immediately after his defection. So that's why through this process, I can easily understand that there was no any, the offer or any communication, pre-communication between those planned defectors and the authority, resident authorities, or any third parties.
Okay, thank you. Next question. So we'll go to Peter here, and come to this gentleman, and then hope to get around to you.
Thank you for your talk. Peter Lang, I'm freelance at the moment. When the talks began between Trump and Kim, in the midst of it, John Bolton cited the example of regime change in Libya, which was interpreted in some quarters as a great setback to the talks. So in your opinion, could you say, is John Bolton part of the problem or part of the solution?
North Korea's diplomacy is based on three principles for several decades. The first one is America cannot attack North Korea. It is a kind of, long established theory. Even though North Korea is saying that they are threatened by American forces or whatever, but North Korea fully understands that America cannot attack, preemptive strike or whatever, cannot attack North Korea. That is already established theory. Why? Because all North Korean leaders or diplomats understand very well that if America wants to make any kind of preemptive attack or prevention attack to North Korea, then they have to take care of how many numbers of Americans could be killed in this kind of the military conflict. Now there are more than 200,000 American citizens living in South Korea. So that's why North Korea thinks that this 200,000 American citizens living in South Korea are really a great hostage to North Korea. So first they really believe that America cannot do any kind of military attack. The second thing is that they strongly believe that whatever North Korea does, China cannot give up North Korea. That is the North Korea's second the principle. The third principle, whatever happens, whatever incentives are offered, North Korea should not give up its nuclear weapons. So these are the three the principles which North Korean diplomats are strongly believe in. So you mentioned about the regime change. The word of regime change means a kind of outside influence or outside physical attack to change the regime in a certain country. So North Korea does not believe in that kind of regime change could take place in North Korea. But Kim Jong-un is afraid of regime collapse. Regime collapse is different from regime change. He is afraid of any kind of regime collapse. Kim Jong-un believes that a regime collapse could be possible if the current, the North Korea's free capitalist marketization is going on. If Kim Jong-un cannot prevent the inflow of outside informations like South Korean movies or dramas, then I think one day North Korea system can be collapsed. If you read Rodong Sinmun, almost every week or every other week there is a long article that North Korea cannot be collapsed by the American military force or nuclear weapons. But if North Korea allows the capitalist bourgeois propaganda or impure any elements of ideology, then North Korea can be collapsed. So this is not my comments, but this is the remarks coming from Pyongyang.
Oh, sorry, follow-up, Peter, yes.
So is John Bolton part of the problem, part of the solution?
Oh, I think John Bolton is part of the solution because he really understands that North Korea, Kim Jong-un regime cannot give up nuclear weapons. He strongly believes, to my impression, I think Bolton strongly believes in that theory.
Thank you. Okay, we've got this gentleman here, and then to Jesse here. I'll try and get round if I can. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Nakano. I'm a freelance too. From your point of view, frankly, do sanctions really work? And do you believe tougher sanctions hurt Kim Jong-un's regime or even making the regime collapse in the future? What do you think?
I think that is a very good question. You know that a few weeks ago, Kim Jong-un sent a letter to President Trump, and President Trump called it a beautiful letter. So why Kim Jong-un sent a letter to President Trump? Because of that sanctions. Paradoxically, if you look at the current reality, North Korea's nuclear ICBM missiles now are 1.5 years old, right? And on the meanwhile, there are no any further escalation or any further tightening of sanctions. So North Korea's nuclear missiles and the sanctions are going parallel. So as long as this current trend is going on, Kim Jong-un can endure these current sanctions. That's why he understands very well that before the third summit, Trump stopped all further sanctions from America. In March, there was a report that President Trump's aides proposed Trump to add more sanctions. What I was told by Americans that there are now 140 possible sanctions are in the waiting list. But President Trump said no further sanctions, just keep the current UN sanctions as it is. So Kim Jong-un is very happy with that. So by sending a kind of letter to President Trump and by continuing giving a kind of hope of success of third summit, he wants to keep this kind of current parallel. So my opinion is that if America is happy with this kind of current parallel, America cannot force Kim Jong-un to give up its nuclear weapons. As long as the North Korea's nuclear missiles are alive, I think America should increase its sanctions, should tighten more sanctions, more sanction measures should be taken. So if the current level of sanctions are continuing, Kim Jong-un regime can endure. And that is one of the reasons Kim Jong-un visited Russia to discuss this matter Putin. This is the reason why he invited Xi Jinping to North Korea today. And if you look at the Chinese policy, Chinese current policy is double stopping. What does that double stopping? As long as North Korea does not carry out nuclear test or ICBM test. The China also wants American side not to do any joint military exercise, nor for the escalation of sanctions. So Chinese policy actually confirms with North Korea's current, the policy.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got to Jesse now, then yourself here, and one of you two. So Jesse, so there you are.
Hi, thank you for coming. Jesse Johnson with the Japan Times. My question is, Prime Minister Abe has said that he'd meet Kim Jong-un without conditions. But my question is, what conditions or environment are necessary from Kim Jong-un's perspective?
Very interesting question. Prime Minister Abe showed a great interest in having a summit with the Kim Jong-un. And on the meanwhile, Kim Jong-un is also interested in meeting Prime Minister Abe. That is for sure, because as a new leader in this region and the youngest leader in this region, Kim Jong-un can only accomplish the leadership and legitimacy by meeting all the important leaders in this region. Now, he met all of them, except Prime Minister Abe. So maybe not this year, but in his long goal of to become an influential leader in this region, he is willing to meet Prime Minister Abe. There is no doubt about it. But on what condition? That is the question. Because in North Korea and Japan relation, North Korea strongly believes that Japanese government has outstandings to pay. Japanese government has not carried out Pyongyang Declaration, which was signed between Kim Jong-il and Prime Minister Koizumi. So that's why if Prime Minister Abe wants to meet Kim Jong-un, they think that Japanese government should do something in advance to show the sincerity of implementing that Pyongyang Declaration signed between Koizumi and Kim Jong-il. So what does that mean? If Japanese government indicates any kind of economic or humanitarian aid in advance, then I think Kim Jong-un will take that offer. But if there is no any immediate or upcoming, the benefits for Kim Jong-un to meet Prime Minister Abe, I don't think Kim Jong-un will meet the Prime Minister Abe in the near future. So the question is how much and what and when Prime Minister Abe can deliver to make that summit happen.
Just a reminder for the questions here that we're going to prioritize the working journalists with the green lanyards. So sorry if you're wearing a yellow one, but we've tried to keep it to the working journalists.
My name is Patrick Walter with German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. You talked about the fear of Kim Jong-un of regime collapse. So I wonder, I'm not sure how good your connections are still to North Korea, how much information you have, but can you tell us what is the effect of the sanctions on the economy in North Korea, and how close is the economy to some kind of collapse of the regime? And what does it mean in that respect that Kim tries to contact Russia and China? What could they give him economically to help to prevent a regime collapse?
Yeah. First of all, you can easily witness that there is so much frequent change of army generals in North Korea's military leadership. If you review what happened to all those 4-star generals in the past 6 or 7 years, for instance, the Minister of North Korea's defense, the generals in the most top leaderships are changed almost every. So this kind of frequent change in the military and secret the police service are unprecedented in the past 7 decades of North Korea's history. And whenever there is any slight failure in policies, Kim Jong-un almost, changes his people or openly criticize the followers around him. After the Hanoi's the failure, Kim Jong-un reviewed very strongly all the police lines, especially the inter-Korean police line, as well as diplomatic, the police line as well. Now, the people who are engaged in inter-Korean relations now are almost paralyzed because of this Hanoi failure, and all North Korean embassies worldwide are just paralyzed because of this. Even in the recent the news reports that even the State Department and the people in America are in difficulty, even have telephone conversations with the people in North Korea's mission in New York. So that's why now Kim Jong-un is reviewing the whole policy process of diplomatic service as well as inter-Korean relations line. So this kind of frequent change of the people in his leadership shows that he is in fear of the people around him. That is the first the indication. You asked about the economic sanctions. Of course, economic sanctions are creating a lot of difficulties to Kim Jong-un regime, but my argument is that it is not enough to force Kim Jong-un to finally give up its nuclear program. If we want to make him to finally give up his ambition, I think more sanctions are needed. And your question is what China and Russia can do. In the past, last year and this year, I can witness that there are a lot of loosening measures taken by Chinese side in terms of trade with North Korea. According to UN sanctions, Chinese side should send back all North Korean resident workers back to North Korea before the end of December. So I don't think that new work permits are issued to North Korean workers by Chinese authorities. But on the meanwhile, now North Korea and China is looking for a new way to avoid these UN sanctions. For instance, if North Korean workers want to get a work permit, then the work permit allows them to work more around the 90 days in China. If they stay in China less than 90 days without any official work permit, they are allowed to do their jobs in China. So now North Korea is making several shifts to change their North Korean workers frequently in the city's borders with North Korea. So if China sends back every month with one team to another, change these teams, actually it is not against the UN sanctions. That is, so there is a frequent change of North Korean workers. Another thing, one very interesting is that in 2017, Russian government announced that the numbers staying in Russia is around 30,000. But this year, the North Korean workers staying in Russia is around 17,000 more or less. So this means that half of North Korean workers were already expelled or left Russia, according to Russia's official announcement. But is it true? Is that number believable? I don't think so. If 15,000 of North Koreans return to North Korea this year, then it is really a great number to North Korea. That kind of news can be very easily spread nationwide in North Korea. But so far, there was no news from North Korea coming out that any North Korean workers were expelled or returned from Russia's work site. So I strongly believe that Chinese and Russian governments are playing games with these UN sanctions. So I don't think that there is any decrease of North Korean workers working in Russia or China. So the monies are still channeling into North Korea by these North Korean workers.
Interesting, thank you. Okay, so this woman here, please, and then we'll come to Georges. I'm going to try and get around to everyone if I can, but it might be difficult, so apologies in advance.
Catherine Erdmann from ARD German Radio. I would like to know, what do you think about help from South Korea? They are just sending tons of rice to it. Is it the right way, due to the food shortage in North Korea?
No. It is one of really a political issue inside South Korea, whether it is the right time to send food aid to North Korea after the recent North Korea's the missile test launch. So as far as I think the food aid policy by South Korea to North Korea, my the idea is that this kind of food aid by South Korea to North Korea should not be related to any kind of nuclear denuclearization of the process or any kind of political purposes. North Korea has been the receiving country for food aid from international community for the past 20 years. To my impression, I think North Korea is the only country which continues to receive food aid for over 20 years. So this kind of North Korea's food shortage problem is not just this year's or last year's problem. It's a long, the chronicle structural problem. So in face of this kind of the food shortage problem, I think South Korean government should have a kind of long-term strategic plan. Something like, if they want to give the food aid, then the food aid should go to North Korea every year. Not, this year or last year, whatever. There should be a continuation or flow of food aid to North Korea. But the current food aid is very controversial because the current, for instance, the first one was around 8 million donations to World Food Program. Actually, that was decided in 2017, and it waited until now. So why this food aid issue all of a sudden, happened in South Korea? Because South Korean government looked for any kind of leverage to continue the process of dialogue, and then all of a sudden they thought that this could be a new, their leverage to invite North Korea into a dialogue table. So that's why food aid resumed and started. And I think this kind of food aid really serves for any kind of political purpose. So that's why I think if it is a food aid, then it should be based on humanitarian principle. It should be not related to the progress of nuclear negotiations. It should not be related to any kind of North Korea's missile launch or moratorium or whatever. I think continuation is most important.
Okay, to Georges. And maybe then the gentleman in the blue there and the lady at the back.
I'm working for Swiss Radio and Television. My name is Baumgartner. You mentioned fears of Kim Jong-un for people around him. And you didn't also explain how you left your embassy in London when you defected. I would like to know a little bit more about it. But what is your opinion about your analysis or your opinion about the assassination of Kim Jong-nam in Malaysia? And do you think Kim Jong-un could be removed from power by the military in the north? Thank you.
First of all, under the current military structure, it seems almost impossible for any kind of military coup or removal of Kim Jong-un by military officers. North Korea has very unique military structure. It is very unique. For instance, North Korean army must be built for any kind of possible war on Korean Peninsula. But if you look into the North Korea's army structure, the North Korean army is not actually structured for any kind of possible war. For instance, there is the headquarters of general staffs of North Korean army, but the headquarters of general staffs can only control the 600 North Korean servicemen along the military demarcation line. So the generals working in the Ministry of Defense inside Pyongyang, they do not have any arms or pistols at all. They don't have any weapons. The Pyongyang city is controlled by Kim Jong-un's the bodyguard team. There is entirely another two different army force. The forces which protect Pyongyang, which is around 200,000 forces, they are not related to the defense, the Ministry of Defense. So all the North Korean military units are very much diversified. There was no something like, America or South Korean style of military structure. So no army officer or general can organize all, army officers for any kind of possible the military, the coup. So that it is very difficult. Only Kim Jong-un can control all different sections of the military. So I don't think military is possible. And you asked me about the fear of the leaders and also the Kim Jong-nam. Kim Jong-nam, before his death, he didn't have any power. He didn't have any power in North Korean politics. Majority of North Korean people even didn't know the existence of Kim Jong-nam. Very few people knew that there was a guy called Kim Jong-nam as the first son of Kim Jong-il. So he didn't have any the power. But the problem, he was really a problem to Kim Jong-un. What Kim Jong-un continues to tell North Korean people is that he is the only successor in bloodline. So North Korean people now still, majority of North Korean people still understands that Kim Jong-un is the only son of Kim Jong-il. But Kim Jong-nam, when he was alive, he moved around. He made frequent interviews with Japanese press or South Korean press or the other presses. His pictures were frequently shown on medias. So the physical existence of Kim Jong-nam itself abroad is really a great threat. Itself is a threat to Kim Jong-un's legitimacy as the only successor of this bloodline. That's why Kim Jong-nam should have returned back to North Korea and kept silent, or he was regarded as a kind of, the physical subject who should be eliminated in any time soon.
Does the same apply to Kim Jong-un's son, Kim Han-sol?
I think so, yes. So that's why, that is the main reason why Kim Han-sol is hiding. Unless Kim Jong-un cuts off all those unnecessary the people in the bloodlines, I think this kind of the existence of Kim Han-sol or the other people may undermine the Kim Jong-un's legitimacy as the only successor in the family bloodline.
Okay, yeah, yes.
Thank you very much. Richard Carter from AFP. Returning to the theme of the fears of Kim Jong-un, of people around him, there was a lot of confusing and conflicting reports after the failure of the Hanoi summit about various officials being purged. There was even talk of executions and hard labour, even for people as senior as Kim Chol. How credible do you think some of those reports were, and can you give us some insight into that issue? Thank you.
I don't think there was any physical executions. There was policy reviews in those lines, and North Korea is now restructuring those peoples who were involved in the inter-Korean relations and the negotiations and policy lines. But I don't think there were any shootings or executions, whatever. I think according to North Korean terms, they are politically criticized, and we call it review of their lives, or was sent to kind of, revolutionizing education. But that is just 1 or 3 months work in the countryside and coming back to the post. I think that kind of very this slide, I think the punishments were applied, but there were not like any executions or purges or shootings happened because of that Hanoi failure. Because Hanoi failure, Kim Jong-un was partly also responsible for that Hanoi failure. So if he completely turns this responsibility to other people, then I think it would undermine his leadership and credibility, and Kim Jong-un knows that very well, and that is one of the reasons I think there is no any that kind of severe executions. So if you see and if you read those literatures coming from North Korea in the last months, there is a really clear, I think, the change in North Korea's policy with America and South Korea. Before Hanoi summit, Kim Yong-chol, who was in charge of inter-Korean relations and negotiations with America, he was at the top and he was controlling the two lines. But after Hanoi summit, North Korean policy returned back to its original stance. That means American policy will be controlled and done by foreign ministry, while inter-Korean relations will be only done by inter-Korean departments. So these two departments now are completely separated.
Okay, thank you. We're actually at the finished time for this press conference now. Would you be able to take 1 or 2 more questions?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, let's try and keep these short. So, the lady at the back first, and then you. And then hopefully we can get round, but let's try and keep this short and sweet. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kawaii Singh with NHK World Japan, freelance. Well, Mr. Tay, congratulations, heartiest congratulations for defecting and starting a new life, and it's very sweet and soft, and welcome to Japan. One thing I was wondering about yourself and your family, how do you see the future of yourself and your family in the long term? It was a very, very brave decision of you. And if I were in your shoes, I don't know if I could do that. So really, all my respect and our respect from the entire world for defecting. Very brave, and please tell us about your future and your families. Good luck to you. Thank you very much. And to your family. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, I think it is very important to estimate how long Kim Jong-un regime can go on. And I think that maybe 10 years is too short. I don't think Kim Jong-un regime may collapse within 10 years, but I don't think Kim Jong-un regime may continue another 20 years. So I think Kim Jong-un regime will collapse between 10 and 20 years time. And now I am in later 50s. So if I am able to live another 20 or 30 years, I think I will be able to walk back to my hometown. So in my rest of life, I'll try myself, I'll try my best to accelerate the process of this internal system collapse inside North Korea. I want to tell the true nature of North Korea's the systems, the true nature of Kim Jong-un regime, what he thinks on why he's so much obsessed with nuclear weapons, so that America, South Korea, and Japanese government take a right and correct decisions in the coming negotiations with the North Korea. And also, I will try my best to educate North Korean elite in my own way. Now there are around 100,000 North Koreans are abroad. Of course, around 80% of those 100 North Koreans overseas are just normal workers, but there are also diplomats, there are children, businessmen. So there are many North Koreans who are able to access the internet and YouTube of all these IT technologies. So I would like to, I would like to educate them as much as possible to change their minds, and I want to educate that the North Korea's, the policy and way is not save North Korean peoples, and it cannot save North Korea's future. And I think if I try myself to change their minds of North Korean elites, I think one day in the future, I think there is a change. There will be a change. I strongly believe in that.
Süddeutsche Zeitung, Neidad, you just answered half of my question, which is about the current stability of the regime. But you explained that the army will not be able to topple the regime, and the regime will not be changed from outside. Now, how do you imagine eventually implosion or collapse of the regime? Because we don't know anything about dissidents as opposed to any other similar country. Thanks.
Yes, that's true. At this moment, I think there cannot be any immediate, I think, the people's uprisings or the military's initiative to remove Kim Jong-un, because military is not organized, very well organized for that kind of purpose. But I am looking for a change of generations. The people now around Kim Jong-un is the average age of the people around Kim Jong-un are either from 60s to 80s. So these people were actually the second generation of North Korean system, and these people are the ones who actually contributed to some extent to the present North Korean system. But after 10 or 20 years, all of them may retire. And the people who are now in 30s and 40s, they will be in power. And the people in 30s, 40s, and 20s, they do not have any loyalty to North Korea's Juche ideology or the current system. So I think only the time can solve the problem. That is my strong belief. If there is a change of generations in North Korean military, I think one day, when the current generals are all retired and 40s, and the generals now in 40s or 50s, 30s, when they are in power, I think they do not have any solidarity with Kim Jong-un regime. The people who are now in 30s, when they are in power, I don't think that they will continue to share the same ideology or same thoughts with Kim Jong-un. I'm sure that they will say goodbye to Kim Jong-un. If you see the change inside North Korea, the numbers of free markets are increasing. Kim Jong-un is trying to do whatever he can do to prevent the outside dissemination of information, but it turned out to be a failure. Every day, a lot of smugglings of South Korean films or dramas, are happening. If you see North Korean, the inside the education papers, now the people are openly selling South Korean products in the free market. Just 5 years ago, if you are open to sell South Korean products in free market, you are the immediate subject of public execution. But because of the money, the people and those enforcement forces are connected by bribery. So North Korean system is more and more corrupted. The people are not looking for ideology or success of the systems, but the people are looking for material, for money, welfare. I think that is the great change. And once the people started to look for welfare, money, new informations, I think that system cannot last another 20 years. That is my strong belief.
Do you have time for one final question?
Oh, another final.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, we'll definitely make this the last one. And you've been talking for quite a while now.
Siegfried freelance from Germany. What about the legitimacy of nuclear weapon for North Korean regime? It was before. It was every time said if North Korea has nuclear weapon, it gives the regime in the domestic policy strongness. Do you believe in?
Oh, a very good indication. The 12th of June was the first anniversary of Singapore Agreement, and to honor Singapore Agreement on that day, Rodong Sinmun carried a front page article, and that article was very interesting. In that article, it is clearly stated that what North Korea achieved in the last 1 year. The achievement by Kim Jong-un, according to that article, was that Kim Jong-un turned the Korean Peninsula into a peace zone because of that strong war deterrent. It is the first time in the Korean history that Korean Peninsula turned out to be a peace area. The second thing that because of that nuclear weapons, North Korea now has only entered in the rank of powerful states. So I think in other terms, Kim Jong-un is in early of 30s. The leaders he is meeting around are all either in 70s or 60s, 30 years older than him. But in that article said that Kim Jong-un can meet anyone. All those powerful leaders of those strong countries are traveling long distance in order to show respect to Kim Jong-un, So that is the reason how North Korea legitimizing the significance of nuclear weapons. And these nuclear weapons actually serves very well to justify all the failures North Korean system produced. North Korea is in economic difficulties. How they interpret it. Because of this nuclear program, North Korea is under economic sanctions, and that is the reason why North Korea has economic difficulties. They don't say there is any policy mistake or policy failure. North Korea's military, now the conventional weapons of North Korea cannot be now even matched with South Koreans. Very obsolete North Korean weapons. But how Kim Jong-un can justify any kind of possible victory on Korean Peninsula because of nuclear weapons? So nuclear weapons in North Korea to Kim Jong-un can serve the only and last instrument to justify all the failures he made, or his grandfather or his father made.
Okay, and on that note, we're going to have to wind this up. A lot of very, very interesting comments made there, given a lot of journalists in this room a lot of food for thought. So thanks very much. And here is a one-year honorary membership of the FCCJ. I would like you to accept and come and talk with us more over food and drinks if we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think you should probably remain seated while Mr. Tay leaves. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Good. Thank you very much.